Good morning and welcome back to Plannercraft. I'm Natalie and today we are going to be doing a traveller's notebook layout. So first of all, you're going to want to set up your document in Publisher, or if you're doing this with actual physical papers, you just want to have your notebook in front of you. So for those of you that don't have a traveller's notebook to hand to measure, the page width that you're looking for is 121mm and the page height is 222. And because we're printing this, we want to make sure our DPI is at 300. So then we're going to go to pages. We want facing pages, we want 2 pages, and start on the left, which then should give us our layout. Colour, we can leave as is. Margins, if you wish, you can add margins. Now bleed. If you have some letter paper that you're going to be printing this out onto, then you can include bleed and work up to the edges. If you only have A4, however, you're going to want to just keep those elements of your design within the margins, and then you'll be able to print that successfully. So I'm going to put bleed on for now, and let's create our book. So we've got our double page spread, and then we can start to bring in papers. Now I'm going to be working with the Autumn Kaleidoscope Digital Kit, which I've brought in as assets. So to do that, you're just going to open the images in Publisher. Now to do this, you're going to need to make sure that you've done your update to Publisher 2.2, and then you can open images directly in Publisher without having to import them first. So it's a really handy way of getting all those images into your assets and nice and quick to use. Okay, and you're going to see that they all say background. You can change that wording to whatever you want, but just for speed I've just left it as is. So how do we use them? Well, there's a couple of ways that we can work. We can bring them in like so and drag them in, and yeah, okay, that's fine, fair enough. But what if we want to actually have them into a shaped placeholder? So for instance, you might want to put that in a circle, and then we can go and pop that inside. Now you can see that when we drag this in, it's going to sit over the top. If we just drag that into our circle when it feels like it, there we go, come on, in there. Right. He's going to have one of those days today. Come on, stop being awkward. There we go. And we have our circle. So I might use that in a bit. So let's set that to one side for now. Now, if you're kind of wanting to put things off to the side and you're noticing that they're disappearing, they are still there. It's just down to how you have your view set up. So at the moment, if I go into view, you can see preview mode is ticked. So if we untick that, we can then use the outline sections of our page so that we can have a kind of pasteboard that we can work with. I'm not sure if that works there. Let's set that to one side and we can come back later. So while I'm working with a single double page spread, this could actually be like 8 double page spreads, and you could actually make them into a little book. So long as you are working in sets of 4 pages, it's a good way of learning your 4 times table, then you're going to be able to create a nice booklet with these. Okay, so there's one element and one way of doing things. Now, because we're working in Publisher, however, we can also do custom boxes. So I'm going to go to my pen tool, and we can set up something that's going to bleed off the edge. So I'm literally clicking, first of all, the 2 corners of the bleed so that I know I've got a nice straight edge that side to work with. And then we can go here and we can go and do a bit of a wiggly line. Doesn't really matter at this stage because we can change that. So I'm going to drop that in there and have that closed. Okay, and we can still drop an image in, so let's go for this one here. Now, one thing I must say is I'm working with the draft copy, so this is a slightly lower res version. Just makes it easier for sending around the DT and stuff. When you get your copy, you'll have full 12 by 12 sheets that are going to come in, so they're going to come in very big. So you're going to want to shrink those down rather than enlarging them like I am here. So we're going to take that image and we're going to drop that into our curve. You can tell it's had an update. It's like, I don't know what you're trying to do. Come on, stop jumping. Here we go. Let's drag it out. Joys of doing this on a laptop. Okay. And you're going to say, oh no, I've lost my image. And you haven't, it's right here. You can see it's marked by a bounding box. It's just not that it's within our shape. So, what can you do? We can use our arrow keys, certainly. And, you know, we can do that until it's right over there. We can drag it. And we can expand or shrink it as well, that we can get that into our box. Now I'm quite liking how that's worked, because instead of seeing this kind of radial layout, which is how that paper looks, we've got just an element of that, so it looks a lot more abstract. But let's make this edge a bit more textured, shall we? So at the moment it's very precise because we use that pen tool. But let's say we want to rough it up a bit. So, let's close that, and now I'm just going to update those. So if you haven't updated, Studio Link will throw a wobbly. So I'll just pause the video there and be back in a minute. Okay, so now that we have everything updated, should now work. So I'm going to switch to the designer view. Okay, and we want to, let's put some texture into this edge here. So for the first instance, all I'm going to do is use our pencil tool to sculpt that line so that we actually have a more of a torn effect to it. So we want to hit the sculpt button at the top, and for this one I'm actually going to turn the stabilizer off, just because I want that element of roughness to it. It's still going to have a certain amount that it's going to do, but it should be pretty close. Let's go and you always want to make sure when you're doing this that your pencil tool starts on the line and finishes on the line, otherwise it's going to try and add new shape. Now the more you zoom in, the more likely you are to get a smooth finish, so just bear that in mind when you're working, that you want to kind of wiggle it a little bit. So, and try and make it so that your peaks and troughs have like different distances as well. And then we should have something that looks like this instead, so you can see all of our nodes, and then when we click off it, we've got much more of a torn edge effect. Now, when we're working with that, that is changing the frame, it's not changing the paper, so you're not damaging your paper in any way, unless you're physically tearing the papers that you're working with. But then I thought it'd be really cool to show you how we could do like a proper torn edge effect in Affinity. So all these papers are created in Affinity anyway, so you're going to see that we can use a lot of the same tools that I used to create them to actually work with them too, which is funky. Okay, so we've got our torn edge here, and now what we want to do is have like the white of the paper that's going to have a torn edge as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that frame, I'm going to duplicate it. So that we have two. I'm going to press and hold shift, use the arrow key across, send it to the back. Okay, and at this point we've got something that looks like, you know, we've got a bit of random repeat going on. So we could put it on screen, but because there's nothing underneath it, it's not going to change that much. So for now, I'm just going to lighten the opacity of it, just so I can see where my edge is. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that same sculpt tool again. So make sure your sculpt button's still selected, and we're just going to do a few other bits of wiggles because we want it to make it look like it's different. Now see what I mean? If you're not on the line, it's going to draw that different shape, which we don't want. So I'm going to go there. Let's take this out here, and we might have it down here. It's going to really narrow off. Now if you draw that line too far down, you're going to lose this outside edge here. So let's just undo that, way that down there, and take it back onto that line. Okay. Now I'm going to take the image that's in there, and what I want to do is actually flip that image. So if we go back to our move tool, we can just flip it, and it's going to look like we've got a design on the back of our paper. Okay, I'm going to go back to my curve. So we've done a flat opacity, but that isn't really going to cut the mustard here because we want to make it look like it's kind of fading out. So I'm going to put my opacity back up to 100 so we've got that full image. Okay, we can then use a transparency tool as one way of doing it. Particularly if you're working in designer rather than publisher, you're going to have that option. Or we can use masks. So masks are a way of being able to hide portions of an image in a way that has no effect on the image itself. So at the bottom of your layers palette, you've got a little mask layer, and we're just going to click on that. It's going to fill in with white, so basically everything is showing. Now we want it so that we have white showing underneath. Now if we mask the shape, then what we've got to bear in mind is that while it's going to look like it's white, we're also going to then have a visible area when we put something else underneath. So at the moment it's sitting on white. So to help us out a little bit, let's just drop in a rectangle, just bigger than the area that you're working on. And we're going to just fill it in black. And we're going to send it to the back. Okay, so that's going to give us the kind of guide of what's going on with our mask. So, back to our mask. How do we use it? So there's a couple of ways we can do it. We can just use the nice gradient tool, and we can go, want it in the fill, we'll do it linear, and it's going to go completely to black. Okay, so at the moment it's gone and put that colour in there. Don't worry about that, we're just going to click and drag, and we can change how that's going to work. Now the good news is that once we've done that, we can extend it that way. So we're hiding the image, and we still want it to kind of extend just past our torn edge. And this one we're going to bring in. So First thing you've got to realise is that black that we're using is controlling the opacity, but it's going to look like, because we've got black underneath it, that that's the gradient, and it's actually not so. If I go into our rectangle, let's show you what I mean. If I change this colour, you can see that it is actually that background colour that's coming through our image. Okay, so let's get our mask and let's pop it on to our background. Okay, so what that is going to do is then mask our actual image instead, while our curve is still 100%. But at the moment our curve has no fill in it, so let's go to swatches, and I'm going to stick white in there, and we can see that we've got kind of this graduation of our print coming through, but it now kind of needs to be a bit noisy. So at the moment we've got our gradient in there, and we can actually change how that then looks. So we could go to filters and we could add some noise. Noise is good. So let's add some noise, and we can apply that, and let's have a look. So if we zoom in, you're going to see instead of this nice smooth gradient, we've actually got some noise going on in here. So it's going to make our paper look a little bit more fibrous, but we might also go that actually that's not enough. So we can repeat it. So we can just use Command and F until we're happy with that. And we're going to get something that gets more and more contrasty. So let's go back a couple of steps, because we still want to have that kind of gradient going on in there. So we've got that. Now bear in mind our mask, so the bit that we're working with is actually black. So it's really tempting at this point to go, right, okay, I need to add some more white in that. I'm going to use the white brush, or I'm going to use the burn tool and go from there. But what you actually want to do is, or the dodge tool I should say. So I want the burn tool this time, and we're going to go big, and we can actually do a little bit of work in terms of lightening bits up. So although the burn tool actually makes things darker, we're darkening the mask and not the image. So then we can go, okay, there's a little bit more needs it in there because it's bigger. We can just build that up. Okay, if you want to go a bit quicker, so at the moment it's doing it in mid-tones, we can go shadows, and we can increase our opacity, and you can see suddenly it starts to really jump up in that whiteness. And I'm just going to do a bit here, and at the top there it's quite light, but let's do some down here where it's not quite got that effect going. So this is all working on that mask, it's not working on the image. So okay, and it might be that we want to do things like just add a glowing edge to that. So curve effects, if we go inner glow, turn that on, I'm just going to increase that radius, and it's going to make it look like we've got a bit of a rough edge. And of course while we're here we can also put on an outer shadow too. So we're going to just put up the radius and the offset and the intensity, and then we've got a bit of a subtle shadow, giving the feeling of that edge being kind of lifted and curled. Now at this point we can't really make that shadow have lots of depth to it in terms of variable width or anything like that, but for this project that is probably good enough. So now we can get rid of that background and we can see what our torn edge is going to look like. So even at this point, if you wanted to change that curve, we still can. So we can go back to our design persona, back to our pencil tool, sculpt still on, and we can go, actually, let's take this back here because I don't think it would be that wide at that point. And we need to wiggle it a bit more here and take that there. Okay, that's not bad. Just need a bit more there. And we just want to make it so that we're not having too many smooth sections. Okay. So we can zoom back out and go, okay, that's looking pretty cool. And we can even put like a soft shadow on our top layer. So if we go outer shadow, don't want too much. It's just going to give the impression that we've torn away that top layer. Looking good. So that's how we can kind of start to fake things like torn edges digitally. And we might go, okay, let's put that circle there. Now, if we leave that circle between those two, it kind of ruins the illusion a little bit. So you want to make sure that you bring it either all the way forward or all the way back. Choice is yours, but you don't really want to be intersecting the two. So let's go there. It's looking pretty cool. Now a lot of these papers are actually designed to be layouts in and of themselves, so they actually make your life a lot easier. So if you're not feeling confident about, doing some scrapbooking, you can actually just take a sheet, add a few pictures, do a bit of stamping and job done. Whereas if you want to take them further than that, you can do. So let's bring this one in here. So this is kind of the starting point for the collection. So this is sheet number 1, and we've got this lovely icon of the circle, and basically the idea is that you have the spectrum, so that's going to be going around there, but you've also got little blocks that kind of making that colour spiral out and spill over the design. So we can use that as an icon in our layout. So let's go and use that bigger, and we can drop that off the page, and we can take a copy of it, so alt click drag, and we can squeeze it down. Now obviously at this point I'm working with the JPEG files. If you're working with the PNGs, you won't have that white background to contend with at all. So I want to size this down, and I'm going to go about there. Okay. And if you want a really quick way of just having it so that we lose that white background, we can just choose one of the colour modes just to drop that out. So I'm going to go for, let's go for then we're going to see that we lose that white background. I'm just going to pop that there. Okay. So then we can take that group and we can go, okay, now we won't need that paler. So let's group it, because the actual intersection or the interaction of those elements are actually how I want them. I just want it to be paler as a whole. So then we can just control the opacity of the group. So we've got that kind of texture going on in the background. Okay. Now, the other thing about these papers is that they are filled with type. So I love typography. And let's enlarge that up. So you can see we've got this little bit of an icon down here. So just going to take that image out to our bleeds. So if you're working with an A4 printer, just take that in slightly and just have a bit of white edge showing. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that, but again we've got all this white area here. Let's show you another trick with our pencil tool. So we want to have something where you just got this element kind of cropping off here. So let's delete that for a moment and start it from our image frame. So just so that we can do this next step, we put in an image frame first, and we can size that to the same size as our layout if we want to. Okay, I'm going to go to Autumn Kaleidoscope. I'm going to find the paper that I want. And I'm going to drop that there. Press and hold shift and rotate so it's up the right way for our layout. Drag that into our frame. Okay. So I'm going to go into Designer, back to the pencil tool. So again, make sure that you just get that edge. Now if you're finding that it's not letting you, just make sure that your actual, first of all, your rectangle is selected, and the moment it says picture frame. So we can go convert that to curves, and then we can just go and let's shape that. Okay. So then we've got that there, and we can shove that to the back if we want, bring it to the front and drop the opacity down. So that we're bringing that there through there, but I'm just going to go to multiply. And actually, let's go darken for a change, because I use multiply lots, and darken sometimes gets us what we want. Okay, so we've got our background kind of done, and now we want to start to bring in some elements that we can actually design with. So let's go back to our publisher view. We're going to go, okay, we need a circle, and we need to click and drag that out, and then we need to put an image in. So let's pick one from our papers. We can just use part of the design, so I'm just going to drag that in there, and we can go, okay, which bit of the paper do we want to use, how big do we want it, out so that we're picking out a particular element. I do love the papers for these cool textures. So all the textures that you see are actually gel prints. The letters that are behind done using Hazel and Ruby sticky letters, which are really funky. And then when you see the words and things, those are actually our own stencils that we've used. Okay, so I'm going to do a similar thing here. I'm going to add that outer shadow. Like so. That's going to look pretty cool. And let's offset that way. And it's going to look like we 3D'd it up without actually adding any bulk to our journal. Okay, and it might be that you want to put a photo in here. You can do that using that same method. So, you've got several recurring themes in these papers. So you've got dots, triangles, and kind of texture brushes. So, like half-tone brushes. So, I'm going to go for let's go for this one here, because I'm thinking that would look quite good to bring in a line down here. And it can be a bit off-putting to start with that you're going to be working directly into a layer in Publisher, because your brain automatically thinks that you need to be in a photo editor, you want to do it separate image, you want to bring it in, and it's like, no. So, with your layout kind of almost how you want it, we're going to go to Photo, and then we can do New Pixel Layer. So down the bottom of the Layers palette, you've got Add Pixel Layer. Then when we do that, it's going to add in a new pixel layer. Okay. So when I was saying about using the terracotta paper, one way that we can do that is we can use our pixel brushes as a mask and do it this way. But we'll see how it goes, whether we like that or not. So our pixel layer enables us to use brushes. So if we go on brushes, and then we have a few different ones that we use. So we've got textures, and scroll down to the bottom of that, and you've got some half-tone brushes. So you can see that these pop up quite regularly in the papers themselves. So it's going to be really good to include those in with your layout. Okay, so next what I want to do is I want to have my swatches open. Now hopefully it's remembered my palette. It may not do. Okay, no, that's fine. But what I can do instead is you can use that eyedropper. Either way, whichever. Okay, I'm going to go back to layers so I can still see that layers is there, brushes is there, and I'll always like auto expand. And I want to draw a line down here. So we've got that pixel layer that is active, and then we want to have our brush. Go to our brushes, make sure that one's selected, and then when we brush, it's going to pop that in there. Now notice how it did it in black. Make sure you click on your little circle, and then we'll be painting in brown. So at the moment that's quite a small effect, and you know, you end up taking a long time to get it to do what you want it to do. Okay, so increase the size of my brush, so that's usually the square brackets. And then we can just draw again. And you can see, ooh, that looks different. Okay, so it's very clever in terms of the texture brushes as to how it's going to actually apply those. Now, if you have a graphics tablet, or if you have an iPad that you can mirror Affinity to, then you're going to have that ability to control the pressure, and the pressure is going to make those dots swell and shrink. So that's just something to bear in mind. Okay, and if you see it like this and it's got a red dot, that's saying that you've changed something about the brush, so when you click off that it's going to forget it, and it's fine. We can do the same with this one, so we can go bigger and we can go across this way, and you're going to get like this weird half-tone effect. And it's how we can start to bring in those effects across our elements, because we've got that one layer that stretches across everything. So even over here on our torn edge, we can still bring that in. So I'll undo that there. So let's just do a nice straight line there. So these are feeling very grungy, and you kind of almost need to pull back from that just a little. So at any point we can go back to our layers and we can adjust the balance of them. So if you think that one's just being a bit too strong, we can push that back. If we think our group here is too strong, we can push that back. And it's just going to let our other elements on top just sing that up a bit more in terms of what we've painted on or whatever. Okay, so for traveller's notebooks you might want to put things in like tickets and so forth. So you could do a scan of those and bring those in and do all the same effects, or you can print these out and then add those later. So that's just something to bear in mind. So let's do one more thing with you. So I'm going to go back to my assets, and I was saying about this lovely background paper here. There's just something about this one. I wasn't sure about including it originally, but it's so good. Now I want to put something in here that I want to pop that in. So I'm just going to put image box there saying, you know, roughly that's where I want my element to go. I can take that background element, I can drop it inside, and it's going to resize to fit. Cool, and off we go. So now we can do a mask, and rather than use our picture frame to do our mask, we can actually work on that with our brushes. So this is one last way to kind of give you a bit of an insight into effects and stuff. So we've got our brush selected. We're going to go to brush here. You want to make sure that that mask is active, okay, and at the moment it's all white. Now if we draw, you're going to see that actually what we do is we knock out that area, and that isn't necessarily what we want to do. We kind of want it the other way around. So you have options. You could just go on and just take that out entirely. If we drop it down, you can still see that image in there, so it's not that you've lost anything, and that's fine. Then we're going to change our colour to white, deselect, so Command D, and then we can brush our image in, so that although it looks like we've just painted on with a colour, we've actually painted with our paper. So this is probably the one thing you can't do if you are working with an actual physical paper, unless you're willing to sit there and cut out a lot of dots. Let's try some different brushes though, so I'm going to go for something a little bit more grungy, so let's go bigger, and we're just going to spatter that in. Now if we go too close to a corner, we're going to see that corner just here, so just undo. I want to try and stay away from you, like edges, and I'm quite liking that. It might be that we take some of this element out here. Oh, I'm quite liking that. So let's get our picture frame, and we can send that to the back rather than having to worry about tidying up that left hand edge. And we're still going to get little peaks of it through then. Okay, let's do some funky text effects, because we've got all this lovely type over here. And I'm going to keep this fairly generic. So I'm going to use the word photography. Okay, and it might be that I change some characters to capitals and stuff, but just for now, let's get this here, and I want something that's going to be fairly heavy in terms of weight. Now we could go for Washington, but there we go. That's actually looking pretty funky, going that big. Okay, so I'm going to make that text white, which may seem a bit weird, but we've got a white text over here. So by using white over here, we're going to make it look like it's part of the paper. And if we look at our printed text, we've got hints of these different colours around the outside. So how can we show that? So effects, and we can use outer glow and outer shadow to actually mimic some of this for us. But what we can't really do is change the colour. So this is where we have to be a little bit clever. So if I close that for a moment, I'm going to duplicate that photography, and I'm going to work on the bottom one. Okay, I'm going to go to designer, I'm going to go to my contour tool, and I'm going to offset it outwards. Like so. And I'm going to go about there, and we're going to go bake appearance. Okay, and now it's got it all grouped. Now in that group, I'm going to select those individual letters, and what I want to do is weld those together, because what we don't want to do is have those separate at any point. And I can take it out of that group and delete the group. So with some software, it's clever enough to go, actually don't need that group anymore, but Not in this one at this time. It's probably one of the glitches of the updates, but it is what it is. So with our curves, we're going to put in, let's just pick a colour. And put that in there. Okay. And now we kind of need to make that feather and soften. So we can go to our effects, outer shadow. We're going to increase that radius. Now with our offset, we don't really want it to offset, but we do want our intensity up. And we want our opacity up to 100. And I'm going to use that same colour as the shadow. Okay, and if you're not sure, just take it a little bit bigger. Okay, I'm also going to set its blend mode to normal. And the reason we want to do that is because we don't want too much of a lip between, if I zoom in, the outside of our shape and the shadow. Okay, now we can actually change the colour of that. So I'm going to go, just zoom that back out a second, because we want to be able to pick colours from around our layout, and that's how we're going to keep our layout as a kind of cohesive design. But what I'm going to want to do is go to photo, then add pixel, and we're going to do our colours separately. Okay, so let's go for eyedropper. So we can tap eye and we can pull out a colour. So I'm going to get this nice rusty colour, and then we can use our brush, and we can still use our texture brushes to do this. I'm just going to swap that around so we make sure that we've got our brown is important, and we can just go up and down our text. Okay, so try not to worry too much at this point about getting it right. So next I've gone to this kind of purpley colour, and we can do the same again. So back to brush and rotate, swap the colours around, pop those in there, and we're going to take this down here. Now basically we want to do everything to kind of get rid of that grey colour. So if you want to make that neon pink for your shadow, then it can make it easier for you to see. So eyedropper again, and let's go for this kind of tealy colour. Avoid your guides as well, and go back to brush, swap it round. Okay. Okay. So far so good. So we've got this kind of looking how we want it, but we want to apply that colour now to our curve. So first I'm going to group the two together, and then we can choose how we want that. So I'm going to go to colour, So temporarily we've got that as a group. Now the reason I say temporarily is I'm going to go back to our publisher view, drop an image box in here, and this is going to contain our shadow, so you want to make sure that it's big enough. So far so good. I'm going to take that group and I'm going to plonk it in there. Okay, so we can actually take them out of that group if you want to and just have it straight in our picture frame and delete that group. So we now have our shadow. Now if you find that for whatever reason it's not quite blending in, then it can be just as simple as you just need to change this bottom colour. So let's go to colour, and we need to be a little bit more neutral. So I want to try and get these in line. There we go. And we can darken it down. So, okay, so bear in mind whatever colour you put there, you're then going to want to also make sure that your outer shadow mirrors it. So if we go, we can actually just drop it into there and close, and then our shadow matches perfectly. Okay. So let's drop that in there. That's looking pretty good. And we want to just drop that down behind our photography, and if it's wandered off slightly, let's just sort that out. There we go. Ta-da! And again, because we've got this kind of darkened edge going around here, we can also do that in our effect. So add shadow. And we're going to put that up there. Don't really want to use offset intensity though, yes. I'm going to put that there, so. Okay, so at this point it's going to look pretty scary, but that's because we've got the black in here. So let's just go to our purple, do that, and we're going to find that gets a bit more subtle. Let's try the kind of tanny colour. That's a bit better, okay. Okay, quite happy with that. And there we go. Job done. And then we can add our photos and things as needed. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I look forward to seeing you next week when we should be back live and in person. Take care and see you soon. Bye.